The Topeka City Council meeting will please come to order. If you would rise and give your attention to Councilwoman Schwartz for the invocation, and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to introduce Pastor Larry Holmes from the Wanamaker Woods Church of the Nazarene. He's been the senior pastor there. He's been there for 28 years. He lives here in Topeka with his wonderful wife and 2 children and 5 healthy granddaughters.
Let's pray together. Dear God, you're a mighty and awesome God, and we give you praise for your unconditional love. We thank you that your arm is not shortened when it comes to touching the hurting and responding to the cries and pleas of your people. In your perfect timing, you have lifted up these called our city council. No one is here by accident, but rather by divine decree. Remind each of these who sit in a decision-making capacity that they who dwell in the shadow of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. They will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. We invite you, great God, to sit beside each council member tonight as they deliberate the agenda for our city. We would ask that you be the vigilant member in every conversation and whisper words of wisdom, counsel, and encouragement to all who will listen. We also want to remember those husbands and wives, sons and daughters who have released these who serve our city. Remind them, if you would, Lord, that they are not forgotten and their sacrifice of sharing is so appreciated. Thank you for the city of Topeka, the place we all call home. We do not claim to be a perfect city, but we do love freedom, democracy, and the God-given right to prevail in our quest for what is right and best for all. Now may your blessings rest upon these who have made themselves available for service. In the name of the great God of all creation, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Here. Quincy Elementary School is located at 1500 Northeast Quincy and is a Topeka Public Signature Art School. The principal is Mrs. Susan Leotta. It is located 8 blocks northeast of the Noto Arts District, and wonderful things are happening at the school. The school has a partnership with the Noto Arts Center, and the students have actively and with enthusiasm participated in the classes there. And in addition, Councilwoman Ortiz's grandson attends there and looks forward to participating in their summer camp. At the dedication of the Noto Arts Center, the first Friday of this month, the Quincy Elementary Rappers performed the Noto Rap. Is this not on?
He's not on. It sounded good to us.
It is on? I'm just not, this is the second week, so we're still in the learning stage. You know what that's like. All right. Well, anyway, the dedication of the Arts Center occurred last Friday, at which the Quincy Elementary Rappers performed the Noto Rap. The crowd loved it so much that we thought it appropriate to provide this special group a larger audience to be on television, and invited them to open our city council meeting. So I present the Quincy Elementary Noto Rappers with Steve Harrow, music director.
Thank you, Mayor.
Sideways.
Rock
you very much. That's the way to start a council meeting.
Okay, we just had some fun. Let's see. We just had a blast with our good friend Mayor Wolf. We just had some fun with the city council meeting. We just had a blast with our we just had some fun with the city
And in addition, we have two proclamations tonight. The first one is for the Mental Health Month, and I'd like to have Joanne Hawley come forward. We have a proclamation that I will read. Whereas mental health is essential to everyone's overall health and well-being, and all Americans experience times of difficulty and stress in their lives. And whereas prevention is an effective way to reduce the burden of mental health conditions, and whereas there is a strong bond of research that supports specific tools that all Americans can use to better handle challenges and protect their health and well-being. And whereas with effective treatment, those individuals with mental health conditions can recover and lead full, productive lives, and whereas mental health conditions are real and prevalent in any nation, and whereas each business, school, government agency, healthcare provider, organization, and citizen shares the burden of mental health problems and has a responsibility to promote mental wellness and support prevention efforts. And now, therefore, I, Larry Wolgast, Mayor of the City of Topeka, do proclaim the month of May 2014 as Mental Health Month and encourage the citizens of Topeka to support all the mental health organizations in our community who work to promote mental wellness. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I want to thank you, Mayor. Whoops. I want to thank you, Mayor Wolgast, and you city council members for all the positive decisions you make for the city and its citizens. I particularly thank Karen Hiller, who is my representative, and she is very involved in what's going on, always responsive. There are two really good facilities in Topeka that help people with mental health problems. One is Stormont Vale West at 6th and Gage. They offer excellent treatment for persons suffering with a mental illness. They have an inpatient and an outpatient service. And Vallejo Behavioral Health Care is an awesome place for people that are struggling with their mental health. They have providers that are great. They have classes that are supportive. And there are two organizations that are very supportive of individuals in the city. And we have representation here from DBSA, NAMI Topeka, and NAMI Kansas. Would you please stand, please?
Thank you. Thank you. The second proclamation is for Bike Month. Andy Fry. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't, looking around, didn't see you. Hello. Good to have you here. And we will proceed with the proclamation. Whereas for more than a century, the bicycle has been an important part of the lives of most Americans, and whereas today millions of Americans engage in bicycling as an environmentally sound form of transportation, and whereas the education of cyclists and motorists as to the proper and safe operation of bicycles is important to ensure their safety, and whereas the League of American Bicyclists and independent cyclists throughout our city are promoting greater public awareness of bicycle operation and safety education in an effort to reduce accidents, injuries, and fatalities, and whereas Topeka has adopted a bikeways master plan and is becoming a truly bicycle-friendly community, and now therefore I, Larry Wolgast, Mayor of the city, do hereby proclaim May 2014 Bike Month and May 11th to 17th Bike to Work Week, and encourage all citizens of Topeka to get out during Bike Month and ride at least once on a trail to work, for fun, or to a destination to share
to show your support of our efforts to become a bicycle-friendly community.
Andy.
I just wanted to say thank you to the mayor, to the council, and the community for kind of supporting cycling, and as well as recognizing that Topeka could be a cycling-friendly community. Being that it's Bike Month, there's multitude of events going on, but I'll just mention a couple of them. On Thursday, there's the Ride at the City Manager. That's at noon at the City Hall. There's Bike to Work Day and a taco ride on Friday at 6 p.m. at Lee Arena at Washburn. And finally, there's the Ride of Silence that commemorates fallen riders, May 21st, 6:30 at the KTWU parking lot at Washburn. And then all those and more can be found at cycleproject.org/calendar. Again, thanks, and hope to see everyone out riding.
Thank you very much.
Mr. City Manager, I believe we have several presentations. If you'd like to proceed with introducing the first one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first presentation will be given by Brandon Kaufman, the Chief Fiscal Officer for the city, and it will be to walk through the first quarter financial report. As we've talked about several times, one of the objectives we had with both the monthly and the quarterly report was to provide more information so that people could have an understanding as to how the city was spending its money. So I think everybody will be very pleased with the presentation that Brandon makes today.
Brandon.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. You all should have received a copy of the quarterly report. It's about a 50-page document. Basically, just describe it real quick. It's broken down into 3 different areas. You have an executive summary that basically encapsulates all funds of the city. And then it's broken down into the financial area so that it's broken down by each adopted fund that's included within the budget. And then there's kind of more of a miscellaneous section in the back that includes outstanding geo, water, stormwater, water pollution projects, and then also has the treasurer's report. It covers investments and also debt of the city. For the first quarter of 2014, this is comparable to 2013. This is all funds, so every fund in the city. 2014 had revenues of $67.7 million compared to revenues of $59.9 million in 2013. This is a 13% increase at the end of the quarter. That's about $7.8 million. Part of this increase, there was, and I'm trying to give you apples to apples here. There was some timing and some revenue that was received from JADO that wasn't received at this time last year. So that without that increase in there, which was about $3.2 million, if you back that out, comparing to the previous year, it would be about 7.6% increase, or about a $4.6 million increase. Wanted to highlight the key revenues for you that the city receives. So these revenues, these 7 major revenues, represent 78% of total revenues that have been received year to date. You can see ad valorem property taxes is your highest with 33%, followed by sales tax, water fees 9, wastewater fees 9, franchise fees 3, pilots 3%, and then special highway 1%. Ad valorem property taxes are one of the largest revenues that the city receives. Budget-wise, it's probably the second next to sales tax. Year to date, we've collected about $22 million compared to 2013 of $19.2 million. So an increase of 15%, or about $2.8 million. Sales tax revenues are also up about 2%, increase of $262,000 for 2014 revenues of $13.3 million compared to 2013 revenues of $13 million. Water fee collections are also up about 2.94%, or $172,000, with 2014 water revenues of $6 million compared to 2013 revenues of about 5.9 million. Wastewater fees are also up about 1.97% or 111,000 of 5.7 million compared to about 5.6 million. Franchise fees collections are also up for 2014 at 2.1 million compared to about 1.7 million in 2013, which is about a 26% increase or 442,000. There are a number of factors that go into franchise fees, including the rates that are set by the city. Also, weather is a major player in that area, so we had a very cold winter, which means collections are up. Also, the rate increase for Westar went up from 5 to 6 early in 2013, which has also increased collections for 14. Pilots are down about 2%, or down by 41,000. This is the payment in lieu of taxes, so we've collected about 1.8 million in 2014 compared to 1.9 in 2013. So those revenues there make up about 78% of the revenues that have been collected year to date. I'm sorry, I have one more. Special highway, we've collected 585,000 in special highway compared to 558,000 in 2013. So those are up 4% year to date, about 26,000. Total expenditures for budgeted funds, total expenditures year to date are about 40.1 million compared to 2013 of 37.6 million. That's about a 7% increase year to date of 2.5 million. There are a couple issues there that I wanted to touch base with. One, we found an error while going through the quarterly report on health insurance rates that have been charged out to the departments. We've since taken action to correct that error and have also made a journal entry that will reflect some expenditure decreases in the general fund, and then it will also bring down revenues in the health and self-insurance fund. So that error was about $500,000. Also, as I mentioned earlier, on the revenue side, we had received money for JADO that we hadn't at this time last year. We also paid that out. That wasn't paid out at this time last year. That was 3.2 million. So if you backed out those two things, it would actually bring total expenditures down to about 3.3 million, or if you back those out, the expenditure increase year to date would only be about 3.3% increase instead of a 7% increase. The personal service error will be corrected, and then it'll be recognized in the second quarter report and also in the monthly reports moving forward. So these are the 5 main categories of expenditures year to date. You can see personnel is the greatest at 44%, contractuals 42%, commodities 7%, other payments 6%. These are your debt service payments and transfers, and then also capital outlay of 0.16%. Personnel expenditures year to date are about 7.6 million compared to 16.3 million for 2013. This is an 8% increase year to date, an increase of $1.2 million. As I mentioned before, that $500,000 error will bring that down and will be reflected in the monthly reports and also the second quarter report. If you back those out, that'd take that down from an 8% to about a 4.6% increase. Contractuals year to date, the city's spent $17 million for 2014 compared to 15.9 million in 2013. That's a 7% increase year to date, which, as I mentioned earlier about the JADO payment that wasn't included in 2013, If you back that payment out, which was $3.2 million, for comparison, contractual spending would be down 13%. Commodities year-to-date are $2.85 million compared to 2013 of about $2.4 million, which is a 19% increase. Basically here, the timing is for material and street improvement differences in 14 compared to 2013. So that's about a $457,000 increase. Other payments, 2014 was about 2.6 million compared to 2013 of 2.7 million, down about 6% or 155,000. This is primarily debt service payments, so there has been a slight decrease in interest payments year to date compared to last year. Capital outlay is the other major area for the city. Expenditures year to date for 2014 are 66,000 compared to 248,000, so it's down about 73%. Basically, the difference there where there's some capital outlay equipment that was purchased in the special highway fund, and there's not a purchase comparable to that in 2014 year to date. That's kind of a highlight of the quarterly report that goes over the executive summary, so I will stand for any questions.
Okay, first on the, and going back to the property tax, and I think we had this earlier, we've had a substantial increase, and that's our biggest area. And I know you don't have the historical area, but collections were up. There was an effort made by the county to increase collections, as I recall, to explain this. And I think, so that's why we have a substantial increase, which is great. And I think it's getting more of the back taxes that are owed paid. And on the sales tax, I note in here, it's always, we went down because it's very much reflective of the economy. And you make the note, we are now back to approximately where we were at the recession.
Yes.
So we have recovered. Usually it takes, those number of years to get back. So we're now, as we can continue to grow, it would be beyond what we were before 2008. Council members, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. On page 11, which is the total expenditures budget, you talked about there was a $3.2 million expense from the JADO funds that was not reflected in last year's numbers, and there was an additional $500,000 in the correction for the self-insurance. And then I believe you stated that backing those out would show that a 4% increase. I did the math on that, which would bring us down to 36,411,000 basically, which would be a 3.2% decrease.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is that what you meant? It was.
Yeah, I should have said a 3.3% decrease.
Okay.
So that's what sorry.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. So we're spending less than we did last year.
That is correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mrs. Hiller?
Regarding the expenses as well, on page 12, you had the summary. We've spent 44% of our personnel expenses in the first quarter.
Well, that's year-to-date total, so it's basically taking the category and then saying, okay, of the year-to-date total, 44% of those have been personnel expenditures.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so not total.
Making me
year-to-date.
nervous.
Yeah, no, that'd be a bad sign.
Well, yes, it would. Well, that would help to reconcile that we're under on expenses, and thank you.
And one of the things of doing a quarterly report, we can go in and analyze the expenditures and make sure, and that's why, as when the numbers came in, we saw that personnel expenses were a little bit higher than they probably should be, so we're able to go back and catch the error on the health insurance.
And I think we have, you are providing so much information which is great, I think, and we appreciate it. And I think we're gonna have to take a while to learn what's in here and how to read it and everything, and I think that's why the questions are very appropriate, so that we better understand it. Ms. Hiller?
Second question regarding the health insurance.
Okay.
Does that back into adjustments for 2013? Or was that
No,
14
that's
only?
only for reflective of 2014 year. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Mrs. Ortiz?
I'd just like to say that this is nicely done.
Thank you.
Great job. In my 9 years, I think it's very put together very well, and I just want to give you that compliment to you and the team or whoever, but I appreciate it.
Mrs. Delisle?
Brandon, from somebody with an accounting background, just even being able to look at our basis of accounting and taking a look at how you structured everything, and the color coded, you know, are we in a positive place? Are we in a place to look at caution? This is wonderful. I just want to echo Mrs. Ortiz's comments and say thank you for your excellent work.
Okay, other questions? Mr. Colson, do you have a question?
I don't. Thank you,
Okay,
Mr.
but you
Mayor.
may.
I just want to tell
In
for
case
all,
you don't have a go ahead.
for all of you people who want to know how to do an interview, Brandon brought a version of this from his last job to the interview, and one of the reasons that we selected him
Okay.
to create
That's,
this. So.
that's, good choice. Well, I think we'll be devouring this, looking at it more, and becoming acquainted with it. But I'm extremely complimentary.
Thank
I
you.
think this is what we need. The council needs to be informed, and this is the way we need to do it, and appreciate your work, your effort. Last chance, questions? If not, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And Mr. City Manager, we have a second presentation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're going to have a presentation pertaining to endangered properties in Topeka. Topeka, we're saving. At this point, I'd like to ask
Here
Mr. Zach Sneeden to come forward.
News release. And we were, copies were distributed of, I think there are two things, Topeka Worth Saving and also a news release. Those are the two items you'll be speaking from.
Okay.
Mr. Sneeden.
Good evening, council members and mayor and city staff. A little over 2 months ago, myself and the rest of the Topeka Landmarks Commission came before you with a program, the Topeka Worth Saving program. It's a program designed to identify historic properties in our city and work to connect them with solutions for preserving them. The goal is to make this an annual program that coincides annually with Preservation Month in May to raise awareness of Topeka's architectural and cultural heritage. Over the last 2 months, through online and printed applications, citizens were able to extend their voice for preservation issues and matters that matter to them, specifically ones that face critical threat to their existence. In losing them, we would lose also part of our character as a city. By raising awareness, we aim to hopefully heighten citizen involvement and public awareness in that rich heritage, and utilize a process of public input to proactively identify these threatened properties, with an end goal of being able to hopefully connect people with opportunities, whether they be opportunities or incentives that can lead towards the preservation of these properties. And finally, this is acts as a conduit to the Landmarks Commission as well as the City Council to assist in identifying priorities that begin to align resources and actions to address these public concerns for preservation. The nominations that we received, they were evaluated on kind of three main criteria: their historical significance, the threat of the severity, and the viability of a solution for preserving it. Each of these nominations that you'll see in a minute, each address these criteria differently, but at the end of the discussions, we felt that these four properties or places were met the qualifications and were designated as the 2014 endangered properties list. The first one that you're familiar with, probably very familiar with, is Sumner Elementary School. And coincidentally, this weekend marks the 60th anniversary of that historic ruling barring segregation in public schools across the country. Sumner Elementary played a role in that case, as it was the all-white school, which was the basis for the lawsuit. The building as it currently stands is significantly threatened due to lack of regular maintenance and lack of a plan for its for reuse. Local residents have taken care of and watching out for the property, but in its continued vacancy, it leaves it a prime candidate for vandalism and falling further into disrepair. The second property is East Topeka United Methodist Church. This church is in East Topeka and dates back to 1896 and predates much of the development in the surrounding neighborhood. It possesses a distinct architectural character, typical of the 1890s, and is mostly all intact. Its threat to it is that it was recently brought before the Landmarks Commission for demolition, and through a citizen, through kind of an action committee, there was a meeting came together, and people expressed their concerns for it, and have since there's some people that are trying to find a future for it, whether it be in its current place or potentially moving the structure as well. The third property is an interesting one that some of you may be aware of. I wasn't specifically aware of it, but it's a little property. This is a prime example, a good example of raising awareness of these little gems in our community that don't necessarily have a huge historical significance to them, but their place in time and where they're located and what they've served over the years really shows that their importance. This little station, little gas station, sits on south side of East 6th Street and has been a fuel and automotive center since its construction in the early 1920s as a curbside station. The namesake Liberty Station is in reference to the old Highway 40 and its unofficial designation as Liberty Highway, aptly named because Topeka's status as the Free State capital. It has recently gone vacant, and without really any awareness of this property, it could easily fall victim to vandalism or further degradation, and eventually being torn down as being seen as insignificant. And the final property is the Docking State Office Building, another property that's in right in the downtown confines that you're familiar with, sitting on the corner right next to the newly renovated State House. This building is one of the state's finest and first significant examples of modern architecture in the in the 50s and 60s, with its simple, clean lines and austere design. When it was built, the materials selected for both the interior and the exterior were selected for their artistic quality as well as their longevity in standing up to heavy use. And also at the time, it was on the forefront. Its technology and building systems that went into it were on the forefront of technology and building in the 50s and 60s. Many of the things that are in it would be considered far too costly for newly constructed office buildings, especially for state office buildings. It sits within the Capitol complex. It completes nearly a century, or it's one of the pieces of a century of architectural character right within the Capitol complex, the neoclassical style of the Capitol and the Eisenhower building, as well as the brutalist style of the Judicial Center, and then modernism or the modernist style that's the Docking building, and then postmodern that is the Curtis State Office building. So that really completes a pretty significant century of architectural character right in that in the heart of downtown there. As you know from recent news stories, it's immediately endangered by the state's deferred maintenance and a rushed attempt to raise the building. A viable solution should be sought for renovation and reuse of this significant facility. That is all the properties. As you know, there are many more properties throughout the city that also hold great significance in the character of our city. Through this program and other efforts for preservation, raise awareness for these properties and to work collectively to identify solutions that would assist in their preservation. The city is built on a history that we all should be proud of. I am personally encouraged over the last couple of years to see the kind of a renewed interest in both the private sector and the public sector for an importance of towards preservation and preserving that character of our city. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, Zach. And I don't know, did we say Zach chairs the Landmarks Commission, which
Yes,
is
I do.
the entity that's it's part of the city entity that is responsible for preservation and is doing, and this is part of the responsibility to bring these to people's attention.
Well, and this is a program that came out of the preservation plan that was recently adopted by the city. And I think as we go forward, coming forward next May, that we would treat this kind of also as an annual report of the Landmarks Commission to the City Council.
Okay,
So,
good,
thank
thank
you.
you. Are there questions, comments? And if you have good eyesight, you can tell that his necktie is appropriate for bike week.
I'll advocate on that too.
Ms. Siller?
I do have a question, thank you. Regarding the docking building, we've all watched the news about the legislative consideration of this. Part of the angle that was discussed at the legislature was that this building, because it had been overused, is structurally not sound. I don't want to put you on the spot
Yeah.
inappropriately, but is that true?
I mean, you can, I don't know the ins and outs of that. I know that you can run a car into the ground by not changing the oil and not changing the tires on it on a regular basis. Buildings are a little more resilient than vehicles are. But I think the bones of it, I would think that the bones of the building are strong and can be, I mean, it would take a complete renovation of the mechanical systems, the building skin, all that, but your base structure and your surrounding supporting infrastructure that's there is strong. I mean, and that's just speaking from a semi-professional assumption, or I mean, I don't have any direct involvement in that building, but I've seen a lot worse being fully restored.
And it's perhaps something we will have a report on to the council at some point.
I would hope so, because if it's really not structurally, if it is structurally unsound, that's very significant, but if it's not, in terms of us defending it,
Yeah,
it
I
would be
mean,
helpful.
Right.
I would appreciate that.
Any other questions or comments?
If I could
Ms.
mention
Miller.
one more thing too, since you mentioned Sumner School, this might be an appropriate time to say that if people do care about the school and
We have
want to
this
make
weekend.
suggestions about future uses, that volunteer group that Zach mentioned will be there all day on Saturday from 9 to 6 and on Sunday from 1 to 6. And part of what they're going to be prepared to do is engage people and take ideas for future uses and possible partners. So
And I think tours of it as well?
tours
or
of the outside and the lobby will be open for people
Okay.
to get a peek inside. And they will also be taking oral histories from people who had experiences in Sumner before or after the decision.
We had at our meeting the other night, when we discussed the landmarks meeting the other night, we had one of the teachers that taught there in the 50s. And she said that we should really be proud of the peaceful, how peaceful desegregation was in Topeka. Whereas across the country they had significant either riots or just a lot of unrest over that, and the desegregation in Topeka was relatively peaceful.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. There are no other questions.
you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And with that, then we will proceed with the roll call.
Mayor Wolgast,
Here.
Miss Hiller,
Here?
Miss Ortiz, Miss Everhart, Miss De La Isla,
Here?
Mr. Manspeaker,
Here.
Miss Schwartz, Mr. Schmidt,
Here.
and Mr. Harmon.
And then, City Clerk, are there additions to the agenda for tonight?
Yes. Councilmember Elaine Schwartz requests to add a resolution granting Trevor Gunn an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 et seq concerning noise prohibitions, and a discussion item regarding the council's priorities for the 2015 budget.
All right, we require a motion to approve those. Councilwoman Schwartz, do you have, do you want to just speak to that, or the reason we're adding it to the agenda and then move its addition to the agenda?
It's a graduation party, so they wanted to get it done before
All right,
graduation.
and you are also moving to add this to
Yes.
the agenda
Yes.
as item 4E under the consent agenda. And Mr.
Second.
Schmidt approved. Seconds. Is there discussion? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, it is added to the agenda. And then secondly, it said that the deputy mayor wishes to add a discussion item. If you would move that we do that, and that would be discussion item C. 6C.
Yes, I think yesterday you should have all gotten some copies of prior budget priorities that were done. We didn't have one for last year, but for discussion purposes, it'd be good to put that out there. So I would move that we add that to the discussion item for tonight.
Is there a second? Ms. Delisla seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, it is added to the agenda. We'll then proceed with the consent agenda.
A is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Pauline Carter to the Citizen Advisory Council to fill an unexpired term ending February 28th, 2015. B is a resolution introduced by Councilmember John Campos II and Councilmember Sylvia Ortiz granting Sacred Heart St. Joseph Parish an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 et seq concerning noise prohibitions. C is minutes of the regular meeting of May 6, 2014. D, there is one application before you for the office lounge located at 124 Southwest 8th Avenue. And E is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Elaine Schwartz granting Trevor Gunn an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 et seq concerning noise prohibitions.
Council, that is the consent agenda. Ms. Delisla has moved to approve the consent agenda. Mrs. Hiller seconds. Discussion. All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, the consent agenda is approved. I would like to introduce Pauline Carter, if you would stand. She's with Capital Federal, a mortgage loan originator, and this will be an appointment to the Citizens Advisory Council. And council members, you know, each of the NIAs have a person on the Citizens Advisory Council, but then we appoint 3 others representing the different professions that work with the Citizens Advisory Council. And we're glad to have you to agree to serve. Thank you very much. We were going to mention at the time that there will be, after public comment tonight, there will be a motion to go into executive session at the conclusion of our regular meeting. So then we'll proceed with the action items. 5A.
A is a resolution introduced by Councilmember John Campos II and Councilmember Sylvia Ortiz approving a special event known as German Fest 2014.
Councilwoman Ortiz, you want to briefly introduce that?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the German Fest that happens every year at Sacred Heart from it's June 7th and June 8th. A lot of good food and good fun, and This is just a resolution.
Right, thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve.
She moves to approve the resolution. Mr. Harmon seconds. Discussion. All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no. I vote yes.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the resolution is approved. We go to item B, resolution pertaining to a use permit.
B is a resolution introduced by City Manager Jim Colson in accordance with Section 1870-030 of the Topeka Municipal Code approving a conditional use permit to establish a communications tower, telecommunication equipment, and accessory facilities on property currently zoned R1 Single Family Dwelling District and located on property at 3107 Southwest 21st Street, of which the 2,500 square feet lease area is approximately 3,000 feet southwest of the intersection of Southwest 21st Street and Southwest Randolph Avenue in the city of Topeka, Shawnee County, Kansas.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Approval would allow for a 150-foot monopole. I'll have Mr. Fyander, Planning Director, provide information and answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, and this is a recommendation again from the Planning Commission, so we're serving as the body, reviewing the action that they took.
Correct. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, council members. As was summarized there, the state is looking to lease a site to Verizon for a 150-foot monopole on the grounds of KNI. The specific site within KNI is actually about half a mile south of 21st and Randolph, and roughly a third of a mile north of the Shunga Trail. So it's in a secluded of a part of the grounds as they probably have. Excuse me. The issues that came through in the public hearing process and in the minutes that you have really were visual in nature. Two things. One, the monopole itself would have probably a minimal impact as where it's located. We did not hear much in ways of its effect. It's so distant from property lines and from the residential areas. The trees do also screen it from the trail. There are also a couple other large, tall towers in the area with a water tower and a smokestack on the VA grounds. And I think we did have some visual simulation pictures of it. This is it looking from, again, from Randolph. As you can see, it kind of blends in with the poles that are there now. And then we have another shot of it from 21st Street. So it is quite a ways away. So that didn't become an issue moving forward. One thing that was brought up during the public hearing is that the base of the tower itself would have some impact for residents that use that area. Basically, it is an unofficial nature area and walking area for folks from the neighborhood. Is technically on the grounds of KNI. And if you look at the site itself, the discussion came up, could this be moved maybe a few hundred feet to the north so that it blends in there's a utility building and some maintenance facilities that KNI has. So that discussion did come up. The staff did recommend, as a condition of approval at the very least, that this should be the base of the tower, which is a 6 to 8 foot tall chain link fence, which should be screened with evergreen trees. There would be a 10-foot equipment building at the base as well. So what ended up happening and what ended up being recommended is, and what we found out is as far as moving it, that was discussed at the Planning Commission. They did take that into consideration. There was 2 dissenting votes. And I think that was exactly for those reasons. We were talking about deferring the action until they could look, until Verizon could work with KNI and see if that could be a better location. So in the end, Planning Commission did recommend approval. I think on a 6-2 vote with the condition of screening the base.
Okay, thank you. And I happened to have the time to drive out there today down that gravel road. And the location, as you can see, is almost directly east of the water tower and smokestack that's very visible. And they're the very left of in the picture. So it's just about straight east of there. Because I had a thought too about it would be closer to the trail. But the trail is clear at the bottom. It's not even on here hardly. Because
Yeah,
see
you can see
there,
on here.
the trail is clear down there, the green part. So there's no way, the trail, the nature aspect of it is really quite a distance from this location. It's really up closer to the KNI buildings, which that was good for me to see because I had a concern if it was down closer to the trail to what really would be the nature area. Questions, Mr. Harmon?
Thank you, Your Honor. Bill, this council has passed or given its approval to the construction of the Victory Village. Whereabouts on the site would be the Victory Village housing unit be?
Councilmember Harmon, it would be, well, if I have an arrow with the mouse there, it's the ball field. So it would be on the VA grounds, just northwest of this cell tower site.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Are there other questions or discussion? Mr. Schmidt?
You said that there were objections voiced and that there were 2 dissenting votes that wanted to explore the possibility of another location. Was that not explored by the commission?
It was discussed with the applicant at the meeting. Eventually, they collectively did not go that route in terms of deferring it, so that the applicant could go back with the state and work out and look at a potential other site.
And in the commission minutes, I believe the applicant said this is like the highest spot, is one reason for that location, rather than start moving it around in different areas. And I'm just adding that if that's
Sure.
if that's the case.
And that's part of it. I think we learned that the state really dictates the site. It's not Verizon coming in where they need it. So it's really up to the property owner's preference as to where it would go. And I think we've learned that there are some plans on the campus there that this may conflict with. So we're just, it would move it potentially closer to a residential area. So I think those 2 things kind of, were part of the thinking as to keep it where it was, at least make that recommendation.
Just a quick
Mr.
follow-up
Schmidt?
to that. Were there any negative consequences given to exploring another location?
The one that was cited at the hearing had more to do with time.
Time?
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Hiller?
I really do appreciate, I read through it and at times I've been concerned about what kind of documents we got, what kind of discussion there was. It looks like this was very extensive and I appreciate that. Because the concerns that were raised were from people who were using the trail, the Shunga Trail and the other trails, I went out the trail to see what it would look like. And unlike the photos from the street, which show lots of power lines and poles, from the trail there really are just trees. And so it will be more obvious in that way. The smokestack and the water tower that are noted on the plan do stick up as well, and it won't be right next to them. It'll be over a ways, so it'll be intrusive in that way. But maybe it's the best if it has to be there at all. I'm not sure it matters. The concern that I have actually is, and there was some discussion about the screening in terms of CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design in an area that's remote that people aren't at. Was the screening going to be out in front of a wall or fence? because that leaves room for somebody to set up camp behind it rather than leave that wall exposed. And so
Yeah, in
I
fact.
was concerned about whether that was a wise requirement.
Councilmember Hiller, the actual condition does require it to be screening that meets SEPTED standards.
Okay.
So it's a chain link fence, which you probably want. You don't want, you want to be able to see through. You don't want it tagged either.
Right.
So if you can have some vertical evergreens, if they're spaced correctly, at least from an angle, it'll look actually screened. If you look straight on, there would be spaces. So we think we can meet that SEPTED requirement.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mhm.
Other questions? Your pleasure, or none? Mr. Manspeaker?
Motion to approve.
Mr. Manspeaker moves to approve. Ms. Delisla seconds. Any other discussion? All those in favor vote yes. Those opposed vote no. I vote yes.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the resolution is approved. We go to item C, resolution on the countywide sales tax.
C is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Richard Harmon expressing the City Council's position regarding the possible submission of a ballot question to the electorate to extend the current countywide retailer's sales tax.
Mr. Harmon, if you want to
Thank you.
introduce.
Thank you, Your Honor. This matter comes before the council for consideration. And by way of background, the voters in 2004 approved a countywide retailer's half-cent sales tax that was used for a variety of purposes pursuant to an interlocal agreement entered into between the city of Topeka and the commissioners of Shawnee County. Those purposes in general included economic development, construction of the Topeka Boulevard Bridge, and various infrastructure projects, notably street and bridge projects within the city of Topeka and the unincorporated areas of Shawnee County. That tax is scheduled to expire on December 31st, 2016. There has been some interest in the community about extending the terms of that half-cent countywide retailer sales tax. And if it was extended, several of the issues are what projects would be funded through an interlocal agreement between the city and the county commissioners, when would it be on the ballot, and how long of a term the tax would extend. I believe the first public hearing or town hall meeting we had was, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Colson, back in November of 2013. I believe we had one. We had another meeting, a town hall meeting, the Thursday before Easter, and then the Monday after Easter, where we solicited input from the public as to how they might want to see the sales tax proceeds used if this tax was extended. And then we had a discussion last Tuesday in council chambers about the various topics. The whole discussion is predicated upon putting it to the voters, for the voters to approve. This would not be something that we would vote on, other than simply to put it on the ballot for a countywide vote. The staff prepared the document that you see before you, agenda item 5C, which in general terms continues the
And I'm going to interrupt a second just to make sure everyone has this in front of them while we,
I'm talking about agenda item 5C.
5C, the amendment, yes.
I'm not talking about the amendment.
Okay, thank you.
The purposes that are outlined in the resolution are economic development, series of infrastructure, street projects within the city. And just looking here, probably some outside the city, I can't tell you. Kansas Expo Center, the Topeka Zoo, and quality of life, more particularly bikeways and walking trails master plans. So I don't know how I ended up being the only sponsor of this, but be that as it may, this is really a product that the entire council has been involved with, and staff has tried to encapsulate those comments and simply presented it for the council's consideration to see where we want to take it from here. Thank you.
Okay. So that is the background and the resolution. We are then open for discussion on it. Mr. Harmon.
Thank you, Your Honor. I do have an amendment to it. On line 42 of the resolution that I just referenced, there's a line item for the Kansas Expo Center. But there's no indication in the resolution as to what the funds are to be used for. Last Tuesday, I voiced some concerns generally about the Expo Center and the use of the funds, and this amendment seeks to address that. Let me read the amendment on line 42, Kansas Expo Center. The following language would be inserted. The proposed countywide retailer sales tax would be used to support improvements to the Domer Livestock Arena to enhance the livestock, equestrian, animal exhibition pavilion. Existing sales tax from the current 2004 countywide retailer sales tax would commission an independent study of the utilization and needs of Landon Arena, which is on the Expo Center grounds, Exhibition Hall, also on the Expo Center grounds, the Topeka Performing Arts Center, and the Jayhawk State Theater, and explore the feasibility of a new performance, exhibition, event arena in or around the downtown corridor on either side of the Kansas River. The reason I brought this amendment before us is to, again, to have the discussion whether the Expo Center grounds is a 30-year-old building. It's aged through no fault of anybody. As a result of its age and the result of other arenas and convention centers that have been built around the area, its use has declined. After the Expo Center was constructed, the Topeka Performing Arts Center was renovated. Its use has, although it started off having some really good Broadway shows, its use has declined. In every budget cycle, we sit around this table and discuss what we're going to do about TPAC. There are some in the community that have urged us to use some of these sales tax dollars to renovate the Jayhawk State Theater in downtown Topeka. I think we need to have an independent study to determine what the needs are and what this community can support in terms of performance halls and exhibition arenas, and to ask the question whether or not it's time to consider construction of a new arena in or adjacent to the downtown corridor. I don't have the answers, but I do think before we pour millions and millions of dollars into Landon Arena, where it's currently located, I think we owe it to the taxpayers to have independent experts take a look at the city and our venues and see what would be the best use of our tax dollars. You know, the truth of the matter is, it just may be that we're just too close to Kansas City. You know, that often comes up, and I've thought of that myself. It's pretty convenient to hop on the turnpike or run over to the Sprint Center or wherever, and maybe we are too close to Kansas City. But I think we owe it to the voters to do a little due diligence, and that's why I put the language in. I do think there is support for the Dahmer Livestock Arena. That seems to be a profitable niche that the Expo Center has carved out for itself, and I do think there is support for that. So at some point, Your Honor, when you think it's appropriate, I would move for this amendment to the resolution.
Okay, so we would need a motion for the resolution, and then it would be the amendment would be forthcoming at that time. Is there other discussion now? We're sort of just open for discussion. Mrs. Heller?
Well, I have a couple of issues that I brought to the table, but first I would like to ask a clarification of Councilman Harmon. In your view, then, would that amendment, my understanding is that money that is left from the 2004 countywide tax cannot be reappropriated until that tax expires. People have looked at that before, which means that this study you're proposing could not occur until 2017 if that money was what was used. So is your proposal here then to basically cut the Expo Center itself out of this proposal and only recommend that the Domer Arena be done in this next round, or at least in this package?
Well, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now, I don't know, I haven't looked into the logistics. I'd refer to legal as far as what the current sales tax could be used for. I would anticipate we would have to go to JADO at some point and ask for permission. But yes, yes, you're right. The tax moving forward, beginning January 1 of 2017, would be what would fund the enhancements to the Domer.
Domer, or Domer, however you say it.
Domer, yeah. Right.
Thank you.
I'm not sure that was a good answer, but it's the best I could.
Well, I think so, because I just wanted to clarify if your idea, I don't know how much the expenses to the arena are, but I think they're only like $2 million compared to the $45 million that's been floated for the entire package. So if that's so, that's a substantial change to the totals.
Yes, another thought I had was, if this study indicated that, say, a new event arena would be feasible, and if it was done in the downtown area, we could consider using a TIF district or a star bond possibly to pay for it, or simply save our money until we could pay for it, sure.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think too, again, our role, if you have the resolution there in front of you, what this resolution does is it says, it is resolved by the city council that the county commissioners consider the following items for which the proceeds of any further countywide retailer sales tax to be used subject to an interlocal agreement. So they ask us for our recommendations. This resolution is stating our recommendations, and so this would be one way of handling that, and it goes to them, and then they put it on the ballot, and assuming it passes, then there is the interlocal agreement that decides actually how the funds, the specific amounts of funds for the different areas. Mrs. Everhart?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask if you want a motion at this point, or you wanna hear, I know we have someone signed up, so I didn't know which route you wanted to.
Either, well, we have a person signed for public comment, Joseph Ledbetter, if you would like to share your views with us now on this resolution. And then I think
Evening, council. As you know, I've been very interested in this. I've been to all the town meetings. I've spoken at all of them. I continue to bring up ideas, but I want to put into the record, I don't have enough for everybody. I'm concerned that the manager hasn't seen this, and this one's for Ray. This isn't, I don't want everybody to see it, but I think I was told that the council had gotten copies of that, but maybe they hadn't. But anyway, this is a Metro News article that shows that one of the county commissioners already said this is going to be a 20-year tax, and that it's going on the ballot in August. So, I mean, when I read that, and it was brought to my attention, I said, well, the council and manager and mayor need to be aware of this. But also, it really bothers me. Have they already made up their minds over there without public meetings, which has been my problem with the sales tax in the past? We've put these things together without public meetings, without public input, and it really gets at the credibility of what we've even been doing in these discussions. So I'm concerned that there's been some backroom deal already done. I want to talk about the handout that was given out last week by Ms. Hiller. Talked about $30 million for bike trails, and I see a lot more cars driving than bikes, and I think we should have a proportion equal to the number of cars on streets, and bikes can use those streets, but cars can't use bike trails, and at least they shouldn't be unless they're DUI, and they shouldn't be that either. But anyway, I think we need to have proportionality when we think about things and cost-benefit ratios, and make sure that the thousands of cars are well-served as well as the dozens of bikes. I'm looking at the resolution, and it's not bad. You know, I mean, I don't agree with it. I'm not in agreement about extending the sales tax for 15 years. The proposal put out last week was 10 or 12 years, and I think 15 is just too much for people right now. I don't think they can put their hands around something like that. I think it's a lot of money, and a lot of people are hurting with higher utilities and gas and everything else that's going on in the economy, and lack of jobs and less jobs, especially in Topeka. But under economic development, I would like to see this definition say shall be focused, not would be, because you're taking away that permissive language and you're making it more clear as to what you want. Then it also says downtown development, so does that include this arena that is being talked about? Does that include more sidewalks being widened? What does that include? And that's certainly, I mean, that's your prerogative to put that in under economic development, but I want to point out that's a dramatic change. You know, we could solve a lot of problems with economic development if we just listen to the people. The people brought up at all of these town meetings, including the League of Women Voters, that they want transparency with their economic development money. If you put in the language that all funds and expenditures shall be subject to CORA, Kansas Open Records Act, you would solve a lot of the complaints about the lack of transparency with Go Topeka and tens of millions of dollars of economic development money that we have a refusal from them to account for. It's not accounted in the public record. If it's not in the public record, then it's not accounted for. Is that it? I'd like an extension.
Your time has expired. Mr. Harmon?
Thank you, Your Honor. 2 minutes, 3 minutes, Mr. Ledbetter.
I'd take 3. Thank you.
Motion to extend for 3 minutes.
Okay, it's been moved to extend for 3 minutes. Ms. Delisla seconds. All those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no.
We have 8 yes.
Thank
Having
you.
voted yes, please continue.
Yes, sir. I'm concerned about the lack of dollar amount on the economic development funds. I certainly do not want to see any group getting more than $5 million a year. That's ridiculous. So we need a number in there. We need a number probably on the Expo Center. We need a number on the Topeka Zoo, and I think the handout given out last week talked about $10 million to complete a big program they've got out there, so why not put the number in there, $10 million? I think on the Expo Center, I don't know how many of you have actually gone through the whole Expo Center. I actually did that. It's not far from my office, and I said, you know, maybe I've been a little hard on them. I think I'll just go see what's really going on over there. They've got deferred maintenance. They've got parking lot issues. They've got roof issues. They've got HVAC that hasn't been updated, and that drives up utilities. It's breaking down. They've got bleachers that when they try to pull them out, people are getting hurt with work comp injuries. The seats are too small, not for me, but there are people that are gaining girth, and they need bigger seats, and that's just the truth. So that's probably costing them sales on tickets because the seats aren't as comfortable. So I'm, you know, and then if you do a new horse arena, you're probably talking, and then covering the sidewalks that need covered because you've got broken sidewalks, you're probably talking anywhere from a $20 to $25 million expenditure, and you still haven't redone all the things they'd like done. But I don't think you're going to solve any problems at the expo with $2 or $3 or $4 million. They've got some serious deferred maintenance, and I'm not blaming anybody here. You're not the county, but somebody should have done a better job of taking care of that building over the years instead of maybe building new ballparks. But that's just a view when you actually walk through it and see everything. I do not see $30 million for a bike trail system. Number 5, what bothers me is sales tax proceeds would be used to implement the bikeways and master plan, or walking trail plan. That's a $30 million item. I think that needs to be lowered. I don't think it should be the bike and walking trails master plan. And I'm not an opponent of bikes. I ride a bike. But I just think that when you're looking at the amount of dollars, not everybody gets everything they want in these deals. So anyway, those are thoughts that I'm throwing out. Would appreciate if you'd at least consider some of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ledbetter. And just a point of clarification, we are not looking at amounts of money in this resolution. We're sort of stating the general philosophy of what we think should be on the ballot, and that's the role at this point. Council members, Mr. Schmidt?
To that point, it's not an amount of money, but it addresses maybe an amount of allocating, or a way of allocating that money. I would, when the time is right, like to propose a second amendment to that. I'll just explain it here first and we can discuss it. On the economic development portion, this tax was originally passed 12 or 14 years ago, and $5 million was dedicated to economic development. It is still $5 million, and we're looking at a 10 to 15 year tax now, which would maintain that number of $5 million. My proposal would be, instead of maintaining that number, which by the end of this tax will be worth roughly half of what it is now, my proposal would be to tie that to a percentage of the revenue from the tax, 1/3 of the tax revenue to that, which at this point would be slightly under $5 million, I believe, based on the recent collections from that tax. But that would also provide an incentive for economic development, whoever has the economic development or contract at the time, in order to increase the allocation of funds for them. They would have to stimulate the economy. The more they do that, the more funds that they would have for further economic development. So I would put that forth for consideration and welcome discussion on it. And when the time is right, I will offer that in the form of an amendment.
I think it would be appropriate to have a motion for the resolution, and then we could start making the amendments and go through the process. If that, therefore, it's going to get confusing if we discuss various amendments before we can take action. Mr. Harmon?
Thank you, Your Honor. Is there a motion on the table?
No, there is
Okay.
not.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would move adoption of the resolution as agenda item 5C.
Okay, it's been moved, and Ms. Delisla seconds this resolution now, so we would be in order for amendments. Mr. Harmon?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would therefore make a motion to amend the resolution on page 2, line 42, and the amendment has been provided in your packet on what I just previously talked about.
Is there, it has been moved, Mrs. Hilver seconds this proposed amendment. So that is before us now for discussion, which is primarily describing the Kansas Expo Center and how the funds, or actually it makes it more specific, the funding for which is just listed here as Kansas Expo Center it would increase the language and the role of those funds. Is there discussion? Mr. Schmidt?
Yes, I like the idea of us exploring other options and going about investigating whether a new arena is feasible or desirable. The problem I have with this amendment is that if that comes back and says that no, it isn't desirable or feasible, we've lost the opportunity to fix what we have now. The way I understand this amendment, we would only have supported enhancements to the Domer Arena and not to the Expo Center as itself. So I wouldn't be able to support that. I support the idea of looking at all of the options that we have. I just don't think that we want to put into a resolution the limiting factor that says we can't go about it if those studies come back differently.
Okay, all right. Other discussion? Mrs. Hiller?
Another way to approach that item, and I just throw this out for conversation, something that we learned in Oklahoma City was that sometimes they did big package deals, and sometimes they do just one item at a time. If what to do with the Expo Center itself is an issue that ought to be considered separately, in our opinion, let's just say, another way to handle that, if people didn't want there to ever be a net of more than a half-cent sales tax going to special projects countywide, would be to dial back how much that total was, so the money would be there 2 years later, let's say, that could be set up as a special tax just to do the Expo Center at the time. So just to cut it loose, so the time frame, I know what this says, this proposal says also that the vote would be next spring, and I don't know if we could figure that out soon enough, and the dollars might be quite different, for instance, if people wanted to do a really big arena, let's say. So we could cut it loose. Thank you.
And I was thinking, perhaps this is something that would be in the interlocal agreement, if we would go, you know, answering some of those questions. Is that, Mr. Legal Counsel?
If I may, Mayor, and that's, I had sent some information out earlier just in terms of how the process works. What we're doing is making, or what the council is doing is making recommendations to the project. When you start spelling out amounts of money, percentages, obviously you can put that suggestion to the county however you'd like, but that's what's spelled out in the interlocal agreement. If you look at the ballot question from the previous ballot question, it just has the projects listed. This is what the money is going to be spent on. But the interlocal agreement is when you get into specifics of who's responsible for what streets, what percentages are going to be allocated, what's the economic development numbers look like. That's the purpose of the interlocal agreement. So I just wanted to hopefully clarify that a little bit in terms of process. Obviously, you can make whatever suggestions as a body you want to the county, but the interlocal agreement is the agreement.
Yes,
So.
and Mr. Harmon you still have a point?
No,
Okay.
withdraw the question.
Okay. Ms. Delisla?
And I appreciate that, Mr. Sublette, because I think that the concern that I have echoing Mr. Schmidt is the fact that this is simply stating a blank document saying these are the things that we believe should be looked at. And if I understand correctly, this resolution does absolutely nothing in regards to establishing the parameters on how the dollars are going to be spent, which is in turn why there is no dollar figures here at this moment, because that's going to be dealt with at a later time. I appreciate, Mr. Harmon, your sentiments, absolutely, of being able to do a study to see if we are better served with something later on. But I think that we would do ourselves a disservice if we start outlining it here. Because what if it does turn out that we are in a great situation over there in the Expo Center, and that is the location for us to enhance. But at this point in time, I think that what is really being asked of us is a determination on what are the blanket statements of the areas that we would like to look into. What I would recommend then is just, like Mr. Sublette was saying, having that conversation with the county then, if these are the intentions in the appropriate meetings, so that we could address this issue directly.
Okay. Mr. Manspeaker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't echo the sentiments of my colleague, Mr. Harmon. Just today, I think the Expo Center announced Cirque du Soleil, Michael Jackson was coming, which there's nowhere else in Kansas that show will be playing. I think Mariachi Vargas is coming this August, which is a big national act. So we do continue to get decent quality acts at the Expo Center. Just a quick Google search of what it costs to build an arena right now. We're looking $380, $450 million. So in terms of the $45 million in cost, maintenance, wear and tear, kicking the can down the road, so to speak, in terms of doing a study and seeing if we need a new arena, could net us a cost of 10 times what we're looking at budgeting just for repairs. You know, maybe we need a new flashy arena. I don't think that's actually the solution. I think the Expo Center serves a purpose for its niche in the market. TPAC serves a purpose for its niche in the market. Jayhawk isn't even a publicly owned piece of property. It's a privately owned piece of property, but I would guess it would serve a niche as well. I think what we need to do collectively as a community is look at what we have to offer in terms of venue space and enhance what the needs are, what the requests are from folks that we're hearing that want to come to our community. And I think right now, with what they want to do at the Expo Center, that is addressing the concerns that we're hearing from conventions and visitors and everybody else that wants to be a member of our community. So I will not be supporting this amendment. I don't think it necessarily serves us well. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Madam Speaker, are there other comments on this amendment? Where the amendment before us is to change the purpose of the expenditure, or put more specific language in the resolution on the Kansas Expo Center. Any other questions, comments? Okay, ready to vote on this amendment. All those in favor vote yes. Those opposed vote no.
We have 4 yes and 4 no.
It is a tie vote, so it requires 5 votes to pass. Therefore, it does not pass. Now, Mr. Schmidt, did you want to make an amendment? I'm sorry? Did you have a question on the vote?
No, Mr. Mayor, I voted yes inadvertently. It should have been a no, so it wouldn't have been a tie vote. It wouldn't have changed the outcome of the election. I'm fine with it remaining what it is. Just hit the wrong one.
Okay, all right. The vote was 4-4, so the motion fails. It requires 5 votes. Mr. Schmidt?
Yes, my amendment would be on line 25 of the resolution, and in between the words fund and would, so that it would read as follows: economic development would consist of 1/3 of the retail sales tax revenue, and then it would continue as stated would be focused on emerging technologies.
Okay, and then in legal, is that, are you comfortable with the,
We're verifying.
I think we're verifying and making sure that's adequate,
Yes.
appropriate language.
Yes, and if you'd like the clerk to read it back, so.
All right, that would be good to do.
Please do.
Amendment on line 25, in between the words funds and would, economic development would consist of 1/3 of retail sales tax revenue and then continue with the line.
Right, I think it's good to get the source in there, 1/3 of the funds received, something like that. Was there a second? Mrs. Schwartz seconds the motion. Okay, we now have discussion on that amendment, putting that 1/3 aspect in. Deputy Mayor.
I think I understand the intent, but I'm not sure if it's attached to all, I mean, I'm not sure how we equate all sales tax revenue to what has been produced by the economic development funds. Do you understand my question? Because there can be an increase in sales tax because current businesses are just, booming, and not necessarily because of and I like the thought process of that it's tied as an incentive package, but I'm not sure if that wording does that. So that's my concern or question.
Well, I think that you're right in that it would serve as an incentive for them to generate economic development. If economic development occurred sans their work, they would still have an incentive, or they would still receive an additional fund. But I think that is the job of the Joint Economic Development Organization to make sure that the organization that we're contracting with is doing a good job of economic development. And if we limit it to a specific dollar amount, like it's been at 5 million for the past several years, we're looking at not changing that dollar amount over nearly a 30-year period. $5 million 14 years ago as compared to, well, it would be, if this was passed for 17 years, or for 15 years, it would be 17 years from now, is probably a fraction of the actual purchasing power.
Okay, and if I could just add to that, I think right now it brings in about approximately $13 million a year. So 500,000 goes for economic development, so the first years it would be less. And I think in the financial report tonight, it's estimating that I think conservatively our sales tax will increase about 1%. The amount we receive increase 1% a year. So in the next 15 years, we should be getting maybe 14, 15, 16 million a year. So then a third would be more than what it is at the present time. And I had a question, Deputy Mayor.
If I may, just a follow-up, not with you, Councilman, but I was going to ask legal, is this something, again, that is more appropriate if we have just economic development as we're looking at as a broad topic, is that something then the interlocal agreement could look at this issue and by agreement determine what the amount should be or how it should be if there's an incentive package?
Yeah, and that's, excuse me, yes, and that's what occurred in the last interlocal agreement. That's how they came up with the numbers. The interlocal agreement spelled out it was going to be $5 million a year and how it was going to be allocated. So if there was any thought to wanting to tie it to a percentage or an incentive, then that's something that could be worked out through that would be worked out through the interlocal agreement to the point that it was acceptable to this body.
All right. Thank you.
Other questions, discussion? Seeing none, so you are ready to vote on the amendment to add that it's a 1/3 amount, goes for economic development. All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no. Does anyone want to change their vote?
We have 5 yes and 3 no.
5 having voted yes, the amendment is approved. And actually, in the state legislature, they get to change, they're asked if they want to change their vote before the final vote is taken, so, but we don't have that in our rules. All right, we have the resolution before us with one amendment. Are there other amendments? Is there discussion? Mr. Manspeaker.
I'd like to make an amendment or motion to amend. I would like to amend line 48 to strike the number 15 and replace it with the number 12 in terms of years.
All right, on line 48.
Second.
Mrs. Schwartz seconds. I'll clear into that. On line 48, that therefore the sales tax would extend over a period of 12 years is what the amendment would state rather than the proposed 15 years. Anyone want to speak to this? Mrs. Hiller?
If I could float a friendly substitute motion just to see what interest there is, we could also say that the sales tax extends over a period of no more than 10 to 12 years. We've talked about anything from 7 to 20.
Okay.
And so this is just for them to consider. So if we felt like 12 was the most we wanted to go, since there has been discussion of less than that, I'm fine with however people feel, but I will offer does it have to be a substitute, or can I amend the amendment?
You can, I think under our new council rules, it's a substitute.
Have to be a substitute motion. We don't amend amendments.
Right.
Okay. I would propose a substitute motion amendment that would say, in line 48, that the sales tax extends over a period of no more than 10 to 12 years.
Okay. It's been moved to change, the substitute motion would state 10 to 12 years, no more than
Correct.
10 to 12 years. Is there a second? Mrs. Ortiz seconds. Discussion? Mr. Manspeaker?
I'm a little concerned with the ambiguity of 10 to 12 years. Why couldn't it just be one number?
Mrs.
If
Hiller?
I can respond, I think that, you know, when I did the work before on it, sometimes that total, when you add up the elements that you want to do in it, it starts to talk to you about just how much, and you work on how much money you expect that you estimate that the tax will generate for that period of time. It can kind of talk back to you in terms of how many years where the math would work in. That's why I say that.
Okay. Other discussion, Mr. Schmidt?
If I get my microphone to turn on here.
You don't mind?
There we go. I got mine. I think, and I may be wrong here, I think the motion, and I think this might be what Mr. Manspeaker was referring to, that the motion should read no more than 12 years. No more than 10 to 12 years is a range, and 10 years is no more than 12 years. It's a redundant way of putting that. That would allow us to go anywhere from 7 to 9 to 12. I believe that was the sentiment that was being expressed, and I would be okay with that language.
Okay, is there other discussion? We have a substitute motion. Mrs. Schwartz?
This happens to be the only thing that I got a lot of emails on was the length of the tax. And I think we saw from the previous tax that we had a project in there that really 10 years later was not really what we wanted. So I'm very fine with the language 10 to 12, although I think times in government, when you set a max, you're gonna probably go the max, which would be the 12 years. So, but I think anything under 15, and as I said, that is what I've heard from people, is that they think, you know, that's an awfully long time to have the tax. Thank you.
Other comments? We have a substitute motion to extend the sales. I'm sorry, Ms. Delisle. I didn't look.
This question is directed to staff. When the resolution was drafted, was there a specific reason of the 15-year period? I mean, when there was evaluation being done with regards to the number of tax revenue received, are the things that the public established as their priorities, would those be able to be funded in a 12-year period?
Mr. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor, Councilmember De La Isla. You asked two questions. The first question is why was 15 years included in the draft resolution? That was what we surmised based on a conversation that occurred amongst this body. In terms of the second question, how does the length of time impact the various projects? The simple statement is the lesser length of time that you have, the lesser amount of money you would have if you're looking at some of the set cost issues such as the zoo and the bike trails, walking trails, and the expo center.
Go
So
ahead.
subsequent question. So let me explain it to me like I'm a 2-year-old. So saying that reducing it to 12 years would more than likely then not allow us to fund the zoo, the expo center, and the other items that we've established? Or not us, that the community has established?
Mayor, Councilmember De La Isla, I could not answer that. I have not done an analysis. If you did I could say based on very rough envelope studies of what, if you estimate the 15 years times 10, 12, 15, 20 lengths of term, that will give you the dollar values that would be generated if you take the amounts of money, 25, 11, 8, based on some of the numbers that were discussed amongst this group and others as to what the larger projects. you would have a lesser amount of money. I think you're asking for, the question is a very good one, sitting here without doing the math and outlining it, I think it would be a very dangerous way to do it. But the simple statement is, the lesser time, the lesser money.
And the only reason that I asked the question, thank you, Mr. Mayor, is because my concern is, this is something that is going out to be a vote of the public, and the only things that we're trying to bring about in this resolution are things that have been outlined as community priorities. These were not priorities that Michelle de la Isla or Mayor Larry Wolgas wanted. These are the things that the community has asked for. And I just want to ensure that when we're looking at the number of years that we're going to allocate to this, that we are able to deliver to the community what they wanted, because there is nothing more frustrating for us to say that we're gonna do something and not be able to complete it. I wholeheartedly understand us wanting a tax for less time, absolutely. But my concern is, are we going to be able to deliver what we set out to deliver? And thank you, Mr. Mayor,
Okay,
that's all.
sure. Mr. Manspeaker?
Can you substitute motion, a substitute motion?
No, there needs to be
No.
a vote on the substitute
No.
motion before we.
Okay,
We cannot have,
thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'll rule we do not. So we have before us a substitute motion. Mrs. Silver, do you want to close?
Yes, just to respond to Councilwoman de la Isla, you may recall, not that you maybe agree with the specifics in the proposal that I had last time, but the one that I submitted was 12 years cash and included everything that's in this list plus a $20 million bridge for the county. So it could be done.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Manspeaker?
It was a $30 million bridge for the county.
It was 20.
All right, I think we have before us a substitute motion to change the extension of the sales tax over a period of 10 to 12 years. Any other discussion? Mr. Manspeaker? Yes.
If I vote no for this, is that voting no against my amendment or
No.
just to
No.
get it?
No, this is.
No, this is, you're only voting on this substitute motion. Your amendment is still
On the
ta-
floor.
Yeah, if this passes, then it replaces yours. If it fails, then yours is still there.
Excellent, thank you.
All those in favor of this substitute motion vote yes. Those opposed vote no.
We have 3 yes and 5 no.
3 having voted, or 5 having voted no, the substitute motion is defeated. And so now we're back on the amendment that the sales tax extension be over a period of 12 years.
If I
Mr.
may.
Manspeaker?
I would be willing to entertain Mr. Schmidt's notion of saying no longer than 12 years.
Does Mr. Schmidt want to make a substitute motion?
Yes, I would like to make a substitute motion that would say, no longer than 12 years.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that statements, we have a substitute motion. Sales tax shall extend for a period not to exceed, is that 12 years? What,
I think the original language was not more than 12 years.
not more than 12 years? Okay, we're in agreement on what
Whatever.
we said. Any discussion?
I'll agree to that.
Any discussion on the substitute motion? Seeing none, all those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 6 yes and 2 no.
6 having voted yes, the amendment is approved.